little. Well, actually, Colin's not that little, but Riley's quite still quite small. His wife had to work late. Okay, with the assembled Congress of Wise Men. Oh,
where?
I think I just heard something that indicates that Nick is not quite available yet.
I'm here.
Okay.
I take it you can't see me. For some reason, my camera shows a little blue light that it's working, but I don't see any picture of myself, so I assume you don't see me.
As long as I can hear you, that's fine. I mean,
I'm stringing along an old computer that's got all kinds of problems, so I just one by one the features fail to work.
That's
and eventually
what she said. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I think what we're going to do, since we never really converged on anything in the discussion, and I guess I don't care anymore, is you can it's another bring your own episode. Okay. So we'll just go around and you can bring whatever Halloween story. It doesn't have to be a Halloween story. Can you say anything scary or weird or goofy or stupid or
Well, I've got 3 stories. One about a ghost hunter who shot at a burglar. He thought it was a burglar, but ended up claiming it was a ghost.
I heard about that.
Was this a Florida man?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, it's from the Miami Herald, so.
Florida man.
Yeah.
Your death is so amusing. Oh, hold on. Knocked my mouse off the table. Okay.
I'll tell you what.
And okay, well, something maybe, you might want to go a little deeper with it, but I'll let you decide. Okay. And if we get past like 40, 50 minutes, we may go around again.
And as I have to leave in a half hour.
So we'll start with you. Okay.
I don't have anything though. Mike Bowler has 3 stories, so let him go. And if I have something to contribute, I'll mention it.
Okay.
I'm copying over the
I think I'm going to talk about Simone Mendez, which is somebody I've recently been in conversation with, and she has a tale that she had a tale to tell. She doesn't want to tell it anymore. She's done after she told it to me, but and I have a few other things as well. Let's see. Oh, by the way, you'd probably be interested to know that the gray aliens, they've recently grown noses. At least,
is that the new illustration style? I haven't seen that yet.
Well, it's literally not what people call a meme on Twitter, but literally a meme. This image of the gray alien that goes around, starting with, I think it started with Whitley Strieber's book Communion, which had this large-headed alien with the big black eyes and no nose. Well, I've got one recently that had a big nose. So they're evolving very rapidly, apparently.
Well, they probably have superior biotech.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted a good schnoz so they could.
They could just engineer a new body for themselves and have their consciousness transferred, and then they have a nose.
Yeah, well, it's a big one, or it could be a dog badly photographed. I'm not sure, but no, I'll stick with Simone Mendez to start. But we'll start with Mike, and Nick. Feel free to chime in. Now, Nick, after you leave, you're going to be gone for the rest of the night, I presume. So.
Well, if you're still on in 45 minutes, I'll probably be back in my office again.
Okay.
Not likely.
Well, we're having a pretty mild nor'easter here, so, but I don't expect any issues with losing my internet connection. It's the remnants of Hurricane Willa kind of just sweeping over us, but it's not, the winds aren't high. Okay. And James, I hope will chime in at some point. I'm going to give him one more invite. By the way, we are live on YouTube, but no viewers.
Yeah, I saw the tweet from you on YouTube.
Well, I
didn't
really make any effort to publicize it. So instead of our usual 2 viewers, we're going to get 0. I'll give James one more invite. I sent him an email too. Now Buck, I've also sent invites to, but he seems to be not able to deal with that for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's been very dicey trying to get him to log on.
I think he's still in Chile, isn't he?
He might be.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I've been hearing stories about the internet fragmenting because of all kinds of issues. The Europeans getting very stuck in having, with the problem they have is non-European companies like Google and Microsoft running the show. They don't like that, so they're trying to fragment. And then, of course, China, which is a significant chunk of the world's population, doesn't want to be freely connected to the internet. So
they have the Great Firewall. So that is a scary story for Halloween. The fragment.
Well, that and the language barrier. I mean, I think if China were like Norway, where everybody spoke English.
Well, actually, there are more English. There are more English speakers in China than there are in the continental United States, because there's more than 1 billion people there, and so many of them have learned.
Well,
English.
Look, I've been getting some of their phone calls lately, and they're not that good at it. And a lot of their spam emails.
Yeah, the Chinglish is pretty funny at times.
And of course, I buy Chinese products. I do. I'm not ashamed of that. Some of the technical manuals are pretty amusing.
Yeah.
I can't blame them. I mean, their English is way better than my Chinese, so I'm not trying to be uppity about it, but
I've got some videos where they're explaining how to put together a 3D printer, and some of the terms I'm like, are they talking about bolt? Whatever, it's, and I have to watch the video to see how they assemble it, and it's like, okay, that's what they're. So I'm starting to learn technical Chinese, or technical Chinese to American.
Yeah, well, things like definite objects in a language are very foreign to them, so they don't use them basically.
Yeah.
There are parts of speech in English that make no sense to them at all. And I'm sure there are parts of speech in Chinese that don't make sense to us. So it's fair.
Yeah, I can muddle through, and I can start if I have a picture to go along with it, it's like, oh, that's what they mean. Okay, I get it. They're meaning a bracket, or they mean a bolt, or a slider, or whatever that what I would call it and what they call it. Then I can, once I start learning the syntax, then I can start picking up, and then it starts making a little bit of sense. Though I bought this robot, and I got the program for it, and it's all Chinese. It's all Chinese letters. And I'm like, okay. I mean, the code, the Python code.
Code is in Chinese?
Well, the code is English, but then the remarks in it is all Chinese and Chinese letters. So I'm like, okay, I got to hammer through this I'm trying to figure out why the speed control I think it's I think the values got messed up in there. So it was like, where do I find the value? How do I fix it? Or do I reload the program or whatever? But I was looking at the code, and the code, it's, the Python part, but then there'd be the remarks in Chinese. So I don't know what they're doing at that point in the code. So, that's been an adventure also. So, and now I'm going to get thrown into my new job. I started a new job, and my first assignment is going to be in Aruba.
Oh, you poor thing.
I know.
How long will you be in Aruba?
Well, if everything comes together, up to 7 months.
Well, I guess it's time to buy a new swimsuit.
Yeah,
it's time for me to switch jobs with you too. You can work for NASA. I'm sure they'll appreciate you.
Yeah, this is be the first time I'm out of the country, so this is going to be an adventure on all different levels. So,
is your company providing housing for you? Do you get to choose your own beachfront shack?
I'm gonna guess that they're gonna try to get apartments and stuff like that. I might be staying out of a hotel for a little while. It depends on how I work it out. If I'm gonna be down there the whole 7 months, or do I?
And you have to be down there in the middle of winter. Oh my God!
Yeah, I know.
Just kill yourself now.
I mean, they twisted my arm, and I'm like, I gotta go.
Okay, well, I recommend getting. You want any recommendations on scuba equipment? I might have some.
There might be some slight weather differences between Chicago in December and Aruba in December.
It's not significant.
Be prepared for both a culture shock and a climate shock.
They have wind in both places. I don't know what you're talking about.
The way I look at it, I mean, I've been sent to places like Iowa. I mean, I've been to Pennsylvania, New York in the winter. Buffalo in when it really snowed. And I kind of figure I'm due. But I mean, every so often I'll get to go out to California, and but it's like then back to Chicago, back to someplace where I think there's one job in Billings, Montana I almost went to. So I figure I'm due. Get some sun for a change during the winter.
Send a postcard.
Oh, I'm supposed to send the guys where I used to work a postcard from there. So with a real Aruba stamp on it. So
right,
got to do that.
Is Aruba its own country?
I think it's part of the Netherlands or a territory of the Netherlands.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it is the Netherlands.
This was there's the 3 islands there: Aruba, Bonaire. I forget what the third one is. Aruba's like really close to Venezuela.
Yeah, those are all legendary diving spots because the coral reefs are. So I haven't been there myself, but the coral reefs are supposed to be really beautiful.
Curacao, Lesser Antilles.
Yeah. One of the guys I worked with, at the old place, he's a professional diver. He even volunteers at the Shedd Aquarium to feed the fish, and they got that coral reef display. So he goes in there to feed the fish. But he's spent a lot of time in Bonaire. He likes it there. Aruba's not bad, but Bonaire is supposed to be much nicer.
I think Bonaire is pretty much all dive shops and docks and boats.
I mean, I was looking at I did a Google map of Aruba, and there's all these dive centers all over the place. So it's definitely a diver's home ground.
Okay. Well, Mike, since Nick has to go soon, I have started recording.
All right.
And we'll start with you. And this is our Halloween special. And so, and obviously we were playing very fast and loose and not doing a whole lot of formality here. Just tell us something. Tell us one of your favorite stories that's kind of goofy or scary or weird or stupid, and we'll just go from there and let Nick comment as he wishes and go.
Yeah. Well, part of my research for my podcast, the story popped up about a self-described.
This is a Skeptic's Guide to Conspiracy, right?
Right. And
available wherever fine podcasts are sold.
Yeah. No ups, no extras. There's a story from the Miami Herald about it's a Miami Herald story, but it's about a guy in Connecticut, Christian Devo. Oh, why do I keep messing up those? Devo. He calls 911 to report a home intruder who said had a gun, the police said. But when the police showed up, he claims that there was no burglar, nobody in the house, and it was probably a ghost he shot at. Because his dog didn't pick up a scent of any would-be intruder, the police said, and the location of the gunshot suggested that Devereaux's story of the home invasion wasn't entirely factual, according to Patch. I guess that's Pat.
Wasn't entirely factual.
Yeah. Reports that the bullet made impact with the wall just 3 feet above the ground.
We're getting used to that these days.
Yeah. So apparently, this guy thought he had a burglar, shot at it, and then made the determination it was a ghost. So I thought it was pretty funny.
Did 911 send anybody to the scene?
The police, and I believe that, let's see. Yeah, the 25-year-old man who describes himself as a paranormal investigator later said it had to be a ghost, police say. He was arrested last week and charged with disorderly conduct, illegal discharge of a firearm, second-degree reckless endangerment, misusing an emergency call, and making false statements to the police. And he's currently free on a $5,000 bond and has a September 11th court date.
He's probably just going to get scolded.
I wonder if it's entered in the police blotter as a ghost call.
I have no idea what they enter in police blotters, but I mean, but he's a paranormal investigator, so he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I would think, that's his.
Those paranormal investigators, they know about ghosts.
Yeah. Because this isn't the first time Devereaux has reported a supernatural sighting to police. As noted by the Journal Inquirer, police said the man called authorities back in 2011 about a home intruder, but blamed it on a ghost when the search for the assailant turned up empty. So apparently, to cover his little, I don't know, why? I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't think we can psychoanalyze this guy.
No, I mean, apparently he owns a gun. Maybe
he's a Florida man. What else do we need to know?
Yeah. So, actually, Connecticut. This came out of Florida, Miami, Florida newspaper. So I kind of misrepresented that, but that's what the story is. But still.
Well, I have to point out, I recently went to a really good talk by a paranormal investigator. His name was Kenny Biddle, and I wish if I had been better prepared, I would have tried to get him on tonight. Kenny has debunked a lot of paranormal videos and photos and hauntings of various kinds. A video of his talk should be available soon. I'll try to make sure everybody gets that. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of paranormal poo-poo out there.
Yeah, I mean, I went and looked at. There's two other stories, and I'm not going to delve into it because this was the more recent one. The other one's from a while ago, but there's one where the ghost hunters going in and being or believed to be burglars breaking into the house. So there's that, there was stuff like that. And then there was one where they burned down a landmark in North Carolina somewhere. You kind of wonder about these guys, what they're, are they doing this? I don't know it, because I've seen here there was a car, it had one of those on, slabbed on the side of the car, paranormal investigators, local phone number and so on. And I'm like, there's not a lot. How do these guys stay in business other than maybe getting a show on History Channel or something?
Well, I think most of them are not getting paid very much, and they're all hoping to get a reality show.
Probably, yeah. Because
you either have to chase Bigfoot, and of course you won't find Bigfoot.
How many years they've been doing that?
I'm not saying that there is no Bigfoot. I'm just saying you won't find him, and or you have to be chasing ghosts.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of these TV shows, and I presume that the cast gets paid something. I don't know what it is, but
it's probably not much, because of the expansion of cable television offerings. there's just a lot of junk reality programming that probably pays very little, and people are glad to get the publicity, so they accept.
Somebody's getting paid, or I wouldn't be continuing. But
that's right. There's a big audience.
Yeah, but it's been going on for years and years and years, and basically, people going around with these night vision cameras, which are make everybody look green, right? And they run around these haunted places and scare each other. What was that? Is their favorite phrase.
Yeah, and then they run and they shake the camera to make it look like something's happening.
Oh yeah, the tech crew are probably laughing up their sleeve as they run around, trying to make it look as scary as they can.
Yeah,
and there's nothing there. It's just some noises, which could be anything. They have this technical equipment, which they have these EMF meters, which are used to find wires, and you probably know a lot more about these than I do, Mike. But they used to find wires and walls, things like that. And they run around and say, "Oh, there's an EMF reading. It just jumped."
Well, Penn and Teller did that one about, and they were like walking around with this meter, and they get close to a lamp, and then all of a sudden it goes off, and I'm like, I think, was it that they doing it or the investigator? But he was like, they get close, and I'm like, "You dummy! You're standing right next to a lamp. It's on. It's drawing current, so you're going to get a reading off this thing." I've got those non-intrusive probes that I can wave around an outlet to see if it's live in that without anything metal touching it. So I could walk around my house. I even bought one of the meters that they were using. I just wanted to see what this thing is, and it's really, it's almost like an amp probe, like something that would there'd be I believe I looked inside, there's a coil, so if you pass that coil, it not really amplifies, but it generates a current in the coil, which of course then reads out. I've seen these people walking around with these for the smart meters. There's these guys, they got these they're trying to read the EMF. They're even EMF meters. You can buy them. Fluke, all the majors make these things, but they put the biggest antenna they can find on this thing, mostly to make it look like some type of real thing. And then they set it right next to so you've got this, you're going to have a false. It's basically a false. You're getting a false signal. Greatly amplified, or looks like it's greatly amplified where it really isn't. And I've seen these, there's that, it's just, I mean, I looked up. I remember I used to get Popular Electronics back in the 70s.
Oh yeah, yeah. I used to get that too. Yeah, great
I
magazine.
subscribed to it.
Yeah, and I remember there was a article about, and it was roughly about 6 months after Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and they had an article about detecting UFOs, and it's basically a bunch of magnetometers, different forms, different where whether it's like a magnet that'll fluctuate, and there was all these. And I was thinking about trying to rebuild those things, and I mean, really, a lot of it is, I mean, because in your house you've got, 120 or 240, at each outlet. There's lights. You got ballasts that are coils. All this. So if you were going to walk around a house trying to make it look like you're chasing a ghost, you could just show them the meter, or you set it to have it make a sound like a Geiger counter, and it starts tick 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 tick. Yeah, we're getting a ghost. We're getting a ghost. No, you're just reading the a normal everyday current. It's like, so when I try to watch these shows, it just gets to a point where all they're doing is they're running around in the dark, scaring each other, playing with electronics that, I mean, when I price some of this stuff, I mean, they've got maybe $5,000 worth of equipment, and all they're doing is seeing normal, they're picking up the normal readings that you would get in a enclosed or near electric, power, or even just.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no control, right? They don't say what happens if we walk around a house that's not haunted, and we with a CMF meter, and there are people like Kenny Biddle who will volunteer. They say, "Yeah, show me. You think this location is haunted? I'll go there. I'll spend the night. Doesn't scare me. And you tell me what I should be looking for." And they won't find anything. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
There's noises.
People like that don't give the public what they want, whereas the kind of people that Mike was talking about with the shaky camera and running around at dark and making oohs and ahs, they do give the people what they want. It's a vicarious thrill. And
have you seen the commercials on this show? They are the low end.
You were just talking about the paranormal investigators that are honest, and they have to deliver a lot of bad news for people who are hopeful. They're kind of like in the situation of the SETI people, who they do all these studies, and they always have to report. They either have to choose between reporting no results and not writing a paper, or reporting negative results. And so it could be a kind of depressing cycle. But see, SETI at least tries to be honest and tries to be scientific. So they actually do publish negative results, because it's part of the scientific community, they get respect for that. But the community that is served by paranormal investigators is very different, and so they don't get respect for publishing a lot of negative results or talking about negative results.
Right.
Well, respect is really not the objective, right? It's
but it plays into the all too human reasons why people do things in the first place.
Right.
If you're not getting something back from a community, you're not going to keep contributing to it.
My big problem is that nobody has ever defined, to my satisfaction, what a ghost is, in such a way that it should have some kind of physical manifestation, right?
Some physical traits, something that you should be able to measure. If it's
they say, well, it's the spirit of the departed. Okay, well, the spirit of the departed doesn't wear clothes. It doesn't have a shape. It's not visible. I mean, even if if you take this seriously, why does it suddenly show up in photographs or trigger EMF meters? Are you saying that a ghost is something physical? If so, give me a theory of how a ghost works.
Well, you get into the same ground as the mind-body problem. How do you show in a theological language, it would be the relation of the soul to the body. In philosophical language, it'd be the relation to the mind to the body. And you could say, well, what does the mind have to do with any matter? And this is a problem that's 2,500 years old, and nobody has a satisfactory answer to it. So you're certainly not among ghost hunters going to get a satisfactory answer to the physical, visible manifestation of a supernatural entity.
Well, let's see, that's the problem. If you can't give me a hypothesis, that something that should appear above the noise, what can we do? What measurement can we take?
You can get a hypothesis, but you can't get a testable hypothesis or a falsifiable hypothesis.
Well, I'll settle for testable.
Yeah, but like I was saying, this does not play in the all too human motives that engage people with communities. And community is not primarily defined by science. It's primarily defined by interest in thrills and chills and Halloweeny sort of stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's what sells. Oh gosh, I can't even pick up trucks and light beer. Not even anything as high revenue as light beer. Something I can't remember what the stuff they sell. It's like tape, strong tape or glue or a place to hide your shotgun next to the bed. The commercials that appear on these ghost shows are so pathetic, so bad. You go under, okay, the revenues are not that high, are they? Why are you doing this?
I think a lot of it is just done for people want the exposure and they want the feedback. Last month I was on Midnight in the Desert. I had a 2-hour-long radio interview, and the guy before me was a guy who claimed to be a time traveler. So there's so many people out there that they can fill all these hours of TV time and all these hours of radio time with people like me who are willing to give our time for free just to get the word out there and hopefully get some kind of response.
Can you prove he's on a time traveler? I didn't think so.
Okay. I didn't attempt to. I made no attempt to gainsay.
Good for you. Okay. Any other good stories, Mike?
Well, I was just going to leave it at that. I mean, the other two stories. I mean, one about they burned down a mansion in North Carolina. I didn't really read into it much. I was trying to find if there was a trend of these, because this was a story from Smithsonian, November 25th, 2013. The old Arabi, Louisiana historic LeBeau plantation was burnt down by men looking for ghosts, according to local news reports. Again, let's see, 7 men entered the house, had been looking for ghosts, trying to summon spirits, beating on the floors. Colonel John Doran told the Times-Picayune. Doran said the men appeared to have become frustrated when no ghosts materialized. Police believe that in a haze of alcohol and marijuana, one of them decided to burn the place to the ground. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Been there. Have not done that.
At least we got a motivation for burning for searching for ghosts and burning a place down.
No, alcohol and marijuana. Well,
that's a fine mix.
That's a hell of a hangover the next morning.
Especially in a jail cell in a drunk tank.
Oh yeah.
But
you got to go sit in the shower and just let the water pour over you for like 3 hours.
Right.
Oh my God.
But I went searching for some stories. That was the three. One, they burglarized the house and then claimed they were looking for ghosts. So
Well, of course they were.
Yeah.
Why else would you burglarize a house?
Yeah. So, no, it's just the strangeness. I mean, even, you know, I have, the one fellow we had on that you had on about the UFOs, who had done UFO investigations. It was maybe about a year ago or so. I'm trying to remember. It was on and he, his take was to actually do the proper research, do the look at it.
Oh, you mean Jack Brewer?
I think so. I think that was.
Yeah, he's investigated the whole UFO abduction game in more detail than most people.
Yeah.
And he's found a lot of really ugly stuff in that.
Was it that, or I thought there was one about pilots getting
Ted Rowe.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, Ted. I'm not sure he's doing that so much anymore, but yeah, he was maybe is leading an organization. I haven't been in touch with him lately. That investigates pilot reports of UFOs, and yeah, they're pretty rigorous, which means they don't come out. That means they don't get a reality show, basically.
Right. Yeah, but when he was explaining what he did, and I think I asked some questions about how he does that, and I mean, it sounds like that is like one of the better investigators into these phenomenon, these strange phenomenon, because it's like, I mean, when we talk about SETI, I mean, these are people who are trying to really seriously, I'm a big fan of SETI because they're gonna be the ones that'll be credible enough because they do look at what they're trying to hear. They're guessing at what they're going to hear or trying to, but they're doing it in a rational way. And so if they detect a signal or they see something, they're probably a lot more credible than some guy who has a radio program in somewhere USA who is visited by aliens or whatever.
Yeah, well, when SETI see something, and they see things all the time. By the way, right. They see little weird glitches on their spectrum analyzer all the time. The first thing they try to do is disprove that it's
a signal,
that it's an ET signal, right?
Right.
And they have a series of rigorous gates that they put it through, and they will go out of their way to disprove it, and they will ask other people to disprove it as well. So because they're, you have to be concerned about your own bias,
right?
And they will go to other astronomers and say, "Are you seeing this? Do you think it's what we think it is?" And that is why, of all those many thousands and thousands of weird things they've seen on their radio telescopes, they haven't declared any of them to be an ET signal, because they put them through these rigorous tests, and they either don't repeat or they don't pass all the various filters they have set up. So they work hard to disprove their own hypothesis, which is exactly how a good scientist should proceed.
Right.
Exactly the opposite of how these ghost hunters go. Right?
Exactly.
They are doing everything they can to prove what they think is the ghost and ignoring any disproof.
Yeah. I mean, they're working the standard, working backwards. Ghosts exist, so here's how we'll prove it. Not going from, what is a ghost supposed to be? I mean, going back to the question, what is the what constitutes a ghost? What is it supposed to be?
Prove exists.
Yeah,
they can't tell me.
Yeah,
they don't know.
Yeah,
they just think it's like if you go into this house, there's some physical manifestation of somebody who used to live there or who died there or whatever, and it'll look like them, or it will make sounds like them, or it will be it's all very horror movie sort of stuff. Right. Scary. It's supposed to be scary and spooky, but every time someone has gone in there with an objective point of view, they always find, oh, well, okay. Floorboards are creaking. The wind is blowing. There's nothing there. Now, what Kenny Biddle has done was interesting. He went to a house that was supposedly haunted, and he took a box or something that he was going to hide, right? And he said, I'm going to hide this in the house. Now, if you people who are hearing the spirits, they're using something called EVP, which is electronic voice phenomena. I don't know if you heard of electronic voice phenomena, but essentially they run a tape recorder with a microphone, and they get a lot of noise, right? And then by filtering it in certain ways, you can hear kind of sort of hear a voice talking to you.
Right.
And it's sort of audio pareidolia. I mean, our brains are not the best objective measurement of what we're hearing. Right. Yeah. But so these EVP people would go in there and they would record this stuff. And he said, and Kenny said, okay, I'm going to hide something in the house. And everywhere I go in the house, I'm going to announce where I am and where I'm hiding it. You guys are in the house. You guys are not going to be in the house at the time. So the spirits, if there are spirits in there, they'll know where I'm putting it. And I'm going to hide it in the house. Now I want you, the ghost hunter, to go in there and ask the ghost where it is. And they will tell you because they know, because I told them. And of course, negative result. Yeah. That was an interesting experiment that he did. I mean, there was some chance that by random chance they would figure out where it was, but it was a pretty low chance. So, yeah, I'll have that video, by the way, available, and I'll post it when I get it. JD Mack is the video guy. I'm pretty sure he has that Kenny Biddle's presentation. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about before we go for that, Mike. Let me ask you if there are any conspiracies that you know of that you think are real.
That I think is real?
Yeah. I know you've debunked a lot of conspiracies. Are there any conspiracies that you're not too? Oh, I'll put it this way: any conspiracies you're not too sure about?
Well, what I'm really I think I've early on in the show, I think I've mentioned that the ET UFOs,
yeah,
are. It would be nice if they were really aliens, and I mean, I wish there was. We were really getting, unfortunately, the evidence isn't really there, at least what we've got right now. I think, but I really would like to think that aliens are, checking our planet out. I mean, I don't think they're buzzing, rednecks in, Arkansas or anything like that, on a daily basis, and mutilating cows and doing all the stuff Hollywood says that they do, or the X-Files say they do, but certainly they skirt by their probes. They're I don't know if they're doing manned missions to finding life on other planets, with a technology to get them across there. But as far as they all, what we from a our Hollywood induced media reinforced view on UFOs and so on. I don't think that's purely fictional.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, when most people, and trust me, I've run into a lot of these people, their idea of an alien from another planet is completely Hollywood. It comes from the X-Files, or it comes from movies they've seen, it comes from stuff they've run into in the internet, with nearly all of which is bogus. And so there, and my own view of aliens is, if they exist, and I don't know that they do, but if they exist, they're a lot more alien than we imagine. They are so weird, so strange, so unlike us, that we wouldn't have an idea why they were doing what they were doing, or what they were doing, or even how they were doing it. None of that would make any sense to us, whatever. And so how do you distinguish that from just the noise of people misperceiving things? It's a difficult problem. I don't know if there's an answer to it. Let me give you what I think is a real conspiracy. Not a massive conspiracy, just a small one. Which, I think you'd agree that small conspiracies that don't involve thousands of people could be real, yeah. Right? Whether it's the police covering up misbehavior by one of their own, or
Elon Musk is getting. I just did the report on that. That there's he had his problems with the Securities and Exchange.
He's still having problems with Securities and Exchange Commission. Yeah. He settled with them on some of this stuff.
Yeah, but then there was the Boeing, because I saw this report about Boeing going into like the major aerospace cities and promoting their commercial space program.
I think that was that was real.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's put that. Some legitimate space reporters found a lot of circumstantial evidence that Boeing was planting stories that were negative on SpaceX. To no avail. It didn't really have any effect, but the guys that came up with this were not conspiracy theorists. They were legitimate people who follow the space industry very closely, and those are people I would believe more than folks who constantly spouting conspiracy theories.
Yeah, because it popped up as in my, when I do my conspiracy search, it popped up that the word conspiracy, but it's like, Boeing's it's a company just like any other, like SpaceX or any of the other comparable, what's some of the other private space.
Blue Origin,
Virgin Galactic. Yeah. So they're all they're all in business, and if they're whatever, because it always seems like the new technology, the new ideas, there's of course there will be those, because I think the story that I had, there was a guy who highly questioned SpaceX's was it to fuel the rockets, like a fast fuel? Was it?
No, what they have their fueling approach to having crewed missions at CREWED, not human missions. Yeah. The load and go approach, which is not the way NASA's traditionally done it, but NASA has been over this. They have reviewed it, and they have determined that it's equally as safe as other approaches. I mean, the thing is, sooner or later, you're going to have human beings sitting in this tiny capsule on top of a huge chemical bomb. There's no way around that. The only question is what's the least risky, not what's a perfectly safe approach. And we saw in the Challenger disaster that the bomb sometimes doesn't blow up the way you expect.
Right. The one piece of rubber between two sections.
Yeah, the O-rings.
The
O-rings were too cold and they didn't expand fast enough. That kind of thing. Hopefully the lessons are learned, but maybe not. But ultimately, rocketry is not perfectly safe. It's getting safer. I mean, the recently Soyuz had a failure, but the people in the Soyuz capsule came down safely. They were not hurt. So, that actually to me makes me think, well, Soyuz is really robust, right?
Yeah,
it can fail and still everybody comes back alive. You've wasted hundreds of millions of dollars, but you haven't killed anybody.
Well, the pinhole in the ISS.
That was a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that got through a quality check. If someone drills through, I mean, we've all.
Well, it was probably pretty well concealed.
Yeah, said something about epoxy and trying to, whatever, putty and epoxy or something, whatever. I think I saw one story.
Well, it strikes me that that's just evidence of poor incentives, that people are afraid to say they made a mistake. In a good system, a good quality system, if somebody makes a mistake, like drops a tool or drills a hole where they shouldn't, they should not be fearful of going to the QA guy and saying, "Oh, I think we didn't do this right. We need to fix it." But I can easily imagine organizations where that would be terrifying. And so somebody decided, okay, I need to sleep tonight, so I'm going to fix this in a half-assed way, and hopefully it'll hold together on orbit.
Yeah. Well, there was that I saw that documentary about the missile that blew up in Arkansas, the nuclear. Was it? I don't want to say
blew up in Arkansas. That I don't know.
There was was it a Titan? No. But there was one of the nuclear silos in Arkansas. There was I forget what it was. An older system. It was actually, I think it was like months away from being decommissioned. They take the fuel out of the rocket or whatever. But a crew went in to do normal maintenance, and they had to use a socket to whatever. I think they had to open or close a valve or whatever. And the handle on for the socket, the socket fell, and it fell like 10 or about 100 feet down, was bouncing and hit the side of the missile. That the fuels just started just started spewing out of the rocket. Not the oxidizer, it was the fuel part. And I don't want to. Yeah, and these guys freaked, and it's like, oh, we screwed up, and they were afraid to tell the control center that's what's happening, and that this compartment is filling up with I forget. The peroxide, the peroxide. Well, they were the main board started alarming that the tank was losing pressure, and they got to keep the pressure in that tank, or the whole missile will collapse on itself. Like that the fuel itself makes the rocket solid. So if that fuel leaks out, there's a potential for everything to start collapsing on itself. It would rupture the oxidizer. Now you got oxidizer and fuel, and then inside a enclosed silo.
So basically, you annihilate everything inside the silo.
Pretty much, and that's what happened. They were trying to send crews in to close valves, trying to get things under control. So there was but everything was sealed up. They had to go in. They had went out through an escape tunnel. Two guys were getting ready to go in. No, two guys went in. They couldn't get through the blast doors. Then they decided to go back in through the escape. But the one guy said, stay up top. The other guy went in. He only got so far, and then he came back out. And then all of a sudden, it was like, boom. The concrete lid came off. Apparently the warhead stayed in one piece and flew a couple miles away from the silo.
A nuclear warhead.
A nuclear warhead.
My gosh.
Apparently, there was a whole series of these little accidents that were being hushed by, or kept hushed by the Air Force, the SAC. There was a documentary on Frontline on it, Command and Control, I think it's called. I wanted to say I keep wanting to say Minuteman, but I don't think it. Maybe it's an early Minuteman, not the Minuteman 3. But because actually, yeah, they were getting ready to decommission those and going to the next generation missile. But when I was watching this, and again, it was like, oh, it's kind of like anything aerospace. The SR-71. You got to get it up to speed so it stops leaking fuel, type of thing. Get the temperature up on the craft. Not have it leak fuel, and so there was kind of some neat stuff there. But yeah, once everything it collapsed, and it's all, and well, really getting back to the these guys, when that wrench fell, or the socket fell and punched a hole in the side, they didn't know what they didn't want to tell anybody. They were like, oh, we screwed up, because they had gotten a new procedure. They were supposed to use a different wrench to turn this valve or whatever on the side. And it's like, oh, now they're in trouble. They're going to get yelled at by their sergeants or their commanders or whatever, their supervisors. These were Air Force personnel. So they're going to get yelled at and get reprimanded and whatever whatever chain that happens. So they weren't ready to. They delayed telling the board that's what's happens, because the board's trying to figure out why we're losing pressure. Do we, is there a loose hose? Is there a valve leaking out of the bottom? And do they try to, because they have to keep the pressure on that one tank or both tanks, keeping the pressure so that the missile doesn't collapse on itself. And so there was all this stuff, and then, I mean, if they would have told them right away, they could have gotten there's a special crew that deals with missile mishaps, that they can get there within half hour. They can get into the silo. They have all the safety equipment, the breather, the air, bringing air in, and all that kind of stuff to get in there to do whatever, to plug the hole and save the missile. But that delay caused a major explosion, killed I forget if it killed 3 or 4 people on site. Fortunately, the stuff that fell down didn't hit any humans or any anything, houses, because it was out in the middle of, it's a rural part of Arkansas.
Yeah.
But the big concern was there's that nuclear missile, that nuclear warhead sitting on top. And what
Yeah,
would
I
it
don't
do?
think it could be armed, but at that point, but geez, I mean, that it's out there in the woods somewhere, and nobody knows where. That's terrifying.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was pretty neat. But again, that one mess up, that one, not so much the mess up, but not owning, getting that information to the right people, get it to the
Right.
that may it could have been the difference between the thing exploding or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing where you got to train people that if there's a problem like that, don't worry about getting yelled at. You're going to get yelled at a lot harder if you don't tell us what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that it's always stressed at the refineries that I'm in. Report everything. You see something out of order, you see something, something that's not right, someone not working safely, whatever. You have perfect right to stop the job and ask them about, are you doing this safely? I mean, when you're climbing vessels and you're working on a pipe.
Yeah, but I don't know how much you know about the Challenger disaster, but that right to stop, right, was denied. The engineers just said, I don't think we should launch in this temperature. We don't really know what we're doing. They were told, shut up. And as a result, 7 American astronauts were killed.
Right.
It wasn't like nobody raised the alarm. That's one of the things. Some people did raise the alarm, and that guy who at Martin Thiokol who failed to heed the alarm was fired, but that doesn't bring 7 people back from the dead.
Right.
So
I mean, because it's like, when I first learned about how hydrotreaters operate and the temperatures and pressure they bring, and it's typical in a refinery. They're putting gasoline or diesel fuel into these hydrotreaters, and they're getting up to like 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. They'll heat that up to when they introduce it to a catalyst, it separates out the sulfur, and that's what's going on, or one of the ways. But if that diesel ever found oxygen, you got a problem. You got a really big problem. Gasoline, if you're heating it up to that level, any oxygen is going to auto ignite. I mean, it's just going to go right to fire. I mean, so being aware of that when you're doing your designs and so on, even there's a thing called a hot tap for listeners. It's where you can tap a pipe into another pipe. I mean, if you ever put in like a filter, like a water filter in your house on your sink, you got this little valve that you twist down and it punches into the pipe or tubing that you have for your cold water, and then it diverts out. That's a hot tap. But you can do this on natural, on flammable lines. You gotta be real careful about if that line has any oxygen in it. If you're, like I said, if you got a line full of gasoline, you can cut into it and, even weld a piece of metal to that pipe. Nothing's going to happen unless you get some oxygen in there. So when they do hot taps, when you hear, if you ever hear the word hot taps in a refinery, that is a very big deal. You've got engineers, you've got the process guys, you've got the safety department. Sometimes even the plant manager gets involved to approve doing a hot tap on, in a refinery because of that. I mean, there's things you can do really safe. I mean, you know, because to a layperson, gasoline, you know, if you like gasoline, diesel, kerosene, any of the, you know, propane, butane, you know, the stuff that we traditionally, I mean, there's a lot of neat things you can do because of the science that, you know, or the science of fire, because, you know, you need the 3, or I guess technically 4 events, one of them getting out of whack, and you get, you know, you get a fire. You know, you got to have a fuel, you got to have oxygen, and some type of energy source or a flame. You know, you try to take away one of them and you can't get a fire. Once all 3 or all 4 come together, then you got a fire. And you know, there's a lot of neat, you know, that stuff. But, you know, again, people have to, you know, they got to review, is that line, is it always going to be continuously, you know, the flammable? Can oxygen get in there at some point, which can kill the hot tap dead? I mean, if there's a chance of any type of oxygen getting in there while you're doing the hot tap, you don't do it. And that's how normally supposed to work in a refinery. Of course, there are some that might, you know, again, they skirt the rules. They're under pressure to get a refined, you know, that's, well, that the oh, what is it? The big oil rig. The
one in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, Deep Horizon.
Deep Horizon, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, they skipped a step. They had a gas leak. You get a fire, and that, you know, and it was basically somebody saying, well, they were basically saying that everything was okay. It's okay to go. And when they started, the gas, the well blew out. They tried to shut it off. They kept trying to shut it off. There was even a point where they could have disconnected, cut the pipe, and just let it basically would just dump oil right into the Gulf, but it would have prevented the fire from starting. But none of those things happened. So you get a fire and people die, you know, because either you didn't want to make the decision, or you're making a decision under duress to get production or whatever. That's usually what ends up happening when a disaster happens.
Right. But, okay. Well, I want to talk a little bit about it. I don't know how well versed you are on this, Mike. Something happened in the 1980s. Actually, many things happened in the 1980s, but I recently had a conversation with a lady named Simone Mendez, who in the early 1980s was a very young airman in the Air Force, U.S. Air Force, and was had a top secret clearance and was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, which, if you know your Western geography, you know that's in North Las Vegas, which is one of the busiest fighter bases in the world. A whole lot of military development and training operations take place there, the Air Force, and it's not very far from the legendary Groom Lake area, which has even more development and testing type of operations going on. All kinds of lights zooming around the sky in that area. People in Las Vegas are quite used to looking north and seeing lights zipping around. They know that's fighter jets flying off to the training area, which is just a little bit north of Las Vegas. And they do bombing runs. They do mock air combat drills. And some of these operations are very large. They involve a lot of planes. But Simone Mendez was there in 1981 as a communication specialist, and her job she's enlisted. Her rank was airman, and her job was to manage a, inside this. Well, she had tasks to perform inside this communication center, which involved classified communications coming in, going out, getting encrypted, decrypted, and then transferred to the proper person on the base. And back then in the early 80s, a lot of this went on paper. It went from the electronics to paper, and the paper was transferred to the appropriate person with the classification stamps on it, top secret, secret, whatever. And there was a high volume of communication. So they had multiple people in this facility. And of course, we don't know everything that went through there. We never will. But Simone Mendez was a young lady from the upper Midwest. Even though her surname is Hispanic, she's actually, if you talk to her, her accent is very Wisconsin or Minnesota sort of accent. She was very interested in UFOs as a young lady. She had seen a few things in the sky. She didn't know what they were. She was quite interested in the topic. And there, at that time, late 70s, early 80s, there was a tremendous amount of public interest in that topic. And she got to talking with another Air Force enlisted person in the communication center where she worked. And they talked about it quite a bit. And then in around August or September of 1981, one of the airmen that she worked with came to her and at her, not at the base, but off base at her apartment, and showed her a document that seemed to confirm that the Air Force was tracking UFOs and knew that they existed and were extraterrestrial in origin. She was, of course, fascinated with this document. This guy was about the same rank as her, I think, and about the same age. And so they had this conversation about it. He showed her this document that he had that was stamped top secret and was had all this really fascinating information in it. Now, that document is lost. We don't have any idea where it is. Nobody knows if it even exists anymore. But we're pretty sure it did exist at some point. Anyway, she asked him, and she will now tell you this was a mistake. She asked him, "Can I keep it just for a little while? I want to read it and make sure I understand it." And she kept it for months in her apartment in North Las Vegas. This is while she was working at the communications facility at Nellis. And apparently, and we don't know all the details here, but the guy's girlfriend the guy who shared the document with her, his girlfriend, at least Simone Mendez thought this was his girlfriend, went to the base and told somebody at the base that Simone had the document that was stamped top secret in her apartment, which, as you probably know, would be a huge security violation. Now, we don't know who this girlfriend is exactly. She wasn't an employee at the base. We don't know what her job was or much about her at all. But she then went to Simone and said, "Come with me. We're going to take this document back to the base." This was in early 1982, after she'd held on to it for several months. And we don't know if apparently, according to Simone, she and the boyfriend had an ugly breakup. But that's not clear if that really happened or if that's just the story that was the narrative that was put forth. So she went back to the base with the document, Simone did, with the girlfriend, and returned the document to a supervisor. And she thought she was done with it. And this began several months of interrogation, which they brought in the FBI. And for several months, she was interrogated. She was questioned. And the FBI, and this is based on documents obtained through FOIA years later, the FBI concluded the document was bogus. There was no Air Force document saying that the Air Force was tracking UFOs or whatever. And she was not criminally charged, but she did, there was no court martial or anything like that. But she did lose her security clearance. And she had, as a result of this extremely stressful, this is like a very young lady, right? She's suddenly encountering these tough guys from the FBI and the Air Force Office of Special Investigation. She collapsed basically mentally and had a emotional mental breakdown, spent some time in the hospital. And when it was all over, and a few months later, they didn't really say anything to her in particular. They just said, well, okay, your security clearance is revoked. Goodbye. And she heard nothing more. And now that in itself is not a big story, but we know what was going on in the 80s were frequent attempts at disinformation to UFO enthusiasts. And Simone was not the only one. She may have been one of the earliest ones, but there are other documented cases of people being disinformed, giving bogus documents about that fed into their expectations. And Simone Mendez was one of these. Now Simone is after she left the Air Force several years later, she went home to the Midwest where she still lives, and she has sort of stayed on the internet and watched people getting her story wrong and so forth. But there were other people like Paul Benowitz. I don't know if you heard of Paul Benowitz. He was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, near Kirtland Air Force Base. In fact, he lived from his house. He could see Kirtland Air Force Base, and the whole Monsanto area, which used to be, I'm not sure it still is, but it used to be a major nuclear weapons storage facility. So there was all kinds of highly classified stuff going on there. If you fly into Albuquerque, to this Albuquerque Sunport, you fly over major government research facilities, and you also see roads that seem to end in mountains or hills. You'll see all kinds of interesting things go. A lot of it's just training facility. It shouldn't be get anyone's conspiracy theory going. I have a nephew who trained out there as a pararescue, Air Force pararescue, which is a very demanding job where you are basically a special forces soldier and a paramedic, and you go in and rescue pilots and try to save their lives and bring them back alive. They have a very rigorous training program, and a lot of the stuff they have out there in Kirtland is to train those guys. But they have Paul Bennewitz was a accomplished engineer, scientist, and businessman who had a successful business in Albuquerque, and he thought he was seeing some weird stuff on Kirtland, and he went to Kirtland Air Force Base and told them what he had, and they disinformed him horribly over the next several years. This happened around the same time frame as Simon Mendez. They told him that it was aliens, and they gave him bogus government documents, just like Simon Mendez received a bogus government document. And during the 80s, there were a number of instances of false documents being passed on to innocent people who didn't know they were false. And in fact, Bennewitz received his documents directly from the Air Force. So he knew that they were, he had every reason to believe they were legitimate. Other documents came in the mail to people or whatever, and there was no chain of custody, so they probably should have been more skeptical. But Bennewitz actually had a mental breakdown as well, and his family then circled the wagons and wouldn't let anyone talk to him. But this is my favorite conspiracy theory right now. That in the 1980s, people at the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, particularly in Albuquerque, at Kirtland Air Force Base, but possibly other places, were heavily involved in disinforming people about UFOs.
I can believe that. Yeah. Well, Majestic 12, the Majestic 12.
Yeah, I think Majestic 12 probably was part of that. Yeah.
And I don't know if Bob Lazar supposedly saw a spaceship.
Yeah, we don't know about Bob Lazar, but I have a hunch that he was part of that whole campaign. Yeah. A useful patsy.
Yeah. Because his story, as I understand it, he's supposed to be some high-level physicist from MIT.
Well, he claimed to have an MIT degree, but
there's no record of it.
There's no record of it. In fact, MIT doesn't have any idea who he is.
Yeah. So,
which obviously is the aliens removing the records from MIT.
Right.
Anyone could see that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't. That sounds like a very. I mean, maybe not it. Because it's one. To send people off on the wrong track. Are they going to be chasing the aliens, or are they going to be spending more time watching the latest stealth technology, or SR-71, U-2, whatever?
The SR-71 was already history at that point, but
yeah, and there's probably something replaced it by now that we don't know about, and
right.
And try to keep people from not knowing what that is.
Well, I think it was mainly to poison the well.
Yeah. I mean,
if people hear, okay, that's all about aliens and UFOs, they're going to say, yeah, right. There's nothing going on out there, and what may have been going on was actually pretty exotic, but had nothing to do with aliens.
Yeah. Or it may have been to get the Russians to spend more money on. If we're finding all this UFO stuff, maybe they should get on the ball and start finding more UFO stuff to compete with the U.S. I mean,
yeah, if you believe that the U.S. has extraterrestrial technology,
yeah,
you better get on the ball and track that down. Which of course is a blind alley. There's nothing there.
Yeah. Well, the Star Wars program probably, since it didn't work. But the Russians started putting so much effort into their own Star Wars program, spend money that they may never, that the technology could never meet, type of thing. So,
well, yeah, right. I mean, Star Wars didn't have to work. It just had to scare the Russians. That was its only purpose.
Yeah.
And it seemed to work in that respect.
Yeah.
So they did spend a lot of money developing technology on that program, but and some of it actually was pretty good technology, but they never had a missile defense system. But as long as the Russians believed that a missile defense system was on its way, they were motivated to come to the table and negotiate, right? Rather than that they thought, this is an arms race we can't win. So
kind of like from Dr. Strangelove, our mine technology, what is it? We cannot fall behind the Russians and our mine technology. When the doomsday bomb was going off, and
I got to get me a doomsday bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that they were.
There's always to deter.
Well, to a certain extent, it was kind of brilliant. I mean, they recognized the Russians cannot possibly outspend us. If we get into a race where it's just purely a question of how much money you can spend, we're going to win that race, and it doesn't even matter what the objective of the race is.
Right.
As long as they get in the race, they think they need to be in the race. We win. So in that sense, it was. It had a lot of strategic smarts behind it.
Yeah.
And that was the time when all this was going on with the with the UFO disinformation. I wonder if they're related. I have no idea.
Well, it's by killing two. I mean, maybe they discovered, hey, we're killing two birds with one stone. We got the UFO people who are now thinking those lights that are actually our latest aircraft technology, they're UFOs, so now they're chasing that. Where on the other hand, then you got the Russians who are like, oh, wait a minute, okay, so these guys over here are thinking, well, that's UFOs. Let's make sure that we're not missing out on something. I mean, it may have been able to do 2 or 3 things, or make 3 objectives out of just one little rumor.
Yeah, we'll probably never know the truth behind that because a lot of the people involved in that are now dead. But and some of the people who were involved who're still alive really don't know what was about. There was a famous fellow named Richard Doty, who's kind of the stooge for all this, but I don't think Richard Doty really knew why he was disinforming people. He just knew that that was his job. And he may or may not have had something to do with the MJ-12 documents as well. But I think whoever did that obviously was a pretty decent document faker, but not great, but good, and that takes some skill that would require some training and concentration. So, because a lot of people I respect really think the MJ-12 documents were fake, or at least a large number of them were. And so that is but it's not easy to make documents that at least look superficially like they came from the 1950s. So somebody must have been pretty highly skilled who did that. So that's my favorite conspiracy. I don't know why it was done or who did it exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it probably went on until early 90s, and where it kind of petered out. And which I think is how conspiracies really end, is they don't really have a big dramatic Hollywood moment. They just kind of peter out.
Well, I think they reinvent themselves. I mean, there's still a lot of that, there's the alien technology. I mean, I still every so often someone will come along, like the transistor was in alien technology.
Oh yeah, Corso.
Yeah. So it, as long as it, because when we're talking about when Nick was talking about the community. Now I've been trying to understand why people believe, or why, what's the psychology, what is, of course I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, and I'm going through these papers, and I've just actually today hit on this, that there's that a conspiracy will stay alive, because it is recognized by a community. And I'm kind of confused between rational and irrational thought, because when I read it, I mean, a rational person. Some of the definitions are like, it makes a person, that a rational thinker is going to be more a positive, or has a positive view on themselves, versus an irrational who has a negative view on themselves. I'm not sure how that relates, but there's also that the rational is going to use the evidence, real evidence, scientifically derived, through the scientific method, trying to be, all the various steps from, generating the hypothesis, determining the, that whole thing, versus the irrational, who's going to say, ghosts exist, so here's the proof that, and this is how we prove it, that they exist, because of, without falsifying, with with nothing scientific behind it. Then again, and I've come across this, I've heard this on other podcasts and so on, and it kind of makes sense. See, like a person that believes in UFOs, that they're alien crafts from the Pleiades. You can get a whole bunch of those people into a room, and if you have a conference, you bring these people in, everyone that believes that aliens are, they're the gray aliens from the Pleiades, and they'll sit down, and you could take a vote of everybody, and that whole thing will be an agreement that UFOs are gray aliens from the Pleiades, and they'll treat that as rational, because they, you got all these researchers who've done their research, and I'm air quoting for the those who'll be hearing the audio version of this. They claim to be scientists. Some of them are, or at least really close to being scientists. But they'll say, we did all this research. This is, all this, and they'll consider themselves thinking rationally, as opposed to what a rational person should be doing. Looking at the evidence. Okay, how does, where's it, I've never, where's these gray aliens? We don't have the bodies. We don't have the evidence that they have ever existed. We've pointed our telescopes at the Pleiades. We've not seen anything out of the ordinary, anything that might resemble technology, like, like what we've talked about on this show. How a civilization is going to, when the telltale signs of a civilization, how they communicate, what chemicals that might be in there, the things that we, many of the topics, go back to the earlier, any of the other Unseen podcasts, you'll hear the discussions about this. But this the evidence, we don't have, there's not this evidence. So the rational would be, that there are no aliens. But again, what we would consider irrational, they consider themselves rational, and that's how they justify it within their group, because there is that, there's always that group. There's the 9/11 truthers, the Obama birth certificate truthers, the false flag shootings. They all believe this. They've all within the community. I mean, that's I want to avoid the politics, but I talked about, I think Trump has played into that, finding those groups and trying to be their guy type of thing. Yeah, we believe you. I believe that. This. I'll try to do this without any more politics, but so certainly there's a within that that community, and I know Nick had kind of alluded to that earlier.
Well, yeah.
Are you glitching?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Because you kind of just went stopped, or
I was looking at something off screen. That still trying to find James. No joy. Well, we've been talking for about 80 minutes now. I think we're gonna wrap it up soon.
Hey, this is about the most I've talked on this show, and in all of them, I think.
Well, it was just you and me, so you had no choice.
Yeah. And I got a chance to get a word in edgewise.
Now, we should point out that people can go to The Skeptic's Guide to Conspiracy, which can be found wherever fine podcasts are aggregated, and hear you every week, basically.
For the time being.
Explain why Alex Jones is a lying sack of shit. And when Alex Jones goes away, you're going to have to find something else, but...
Yeah, that's been
like you said, he's circling the drain right now. Did you see that video of him talking to a pile of horse shit in the street?
Was he looking in a mirror?
He's looking down at the street, and there's this, like, it looks like poop in the street. I don't know, or something, and he's talking to it, or he's shouting at it. There's no audio, so you can't tell what he's saying. And this is, I think, somewhere in Texas. And I'll see if I can find a link for you. It looks like he just completely lost his tiny little mind.
I would hope so. I mean,
he'll get paid well for it, I'm sure. But
yeah,
draw more advertisers.
Yeah, because he's like, I mean, he's suing I think he's suing PayPal because they cut him off financially. I mean, he's still getting out through other side channels and so on. I've been trying to seek out some of the other, because there's guys, well, I haven't looked at George Norrie, but and that bunch. I know there's a couple other Alex Jones types, but they're not as it's like it's just Alex Jones. I mean, then these other guys that kind of come and go. I don't think there's anybody stepping up into his shoes other than maybe Glenn Beck or maybe no, because I haven't heard.
Glenn Beck's a different type of crazy.
Yeah, but he's kind of tapping into that same formula.
It's like he's wrong for different reasons.
Yeah. Well, a lot of his advertisers are the same as Alex Jones, so I kind of he's appealing to that. Well, Alex Jones used to be really big on gold and silver.
Gold, silver, like and fake remedies for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Snake oil and survivalist sort of things like seeds and that sort of thing.
heirloom seeds.
What they call preppers. Yeah, preppers.
Preppers, yeah.
Preppers have to have non-GMO seeds to plant for when the shit hits the fan, right?
Yeah. No hybrids, no.
Because the GMO seeds are a government conspiracy.
Yeah.
To destroy our health.
To sap and purify all our precious bodily fluids.
I can't imagine any of Alex Jones's bodily fluids being precious, but
but yeah, because when I probably don't have those notes here, but I actually on a couple occasions I would actually note what the commercials were on his podcast where he'd run the commercials, and I tried to list everything. And early, I want to say probably in the maybe 2002, 2003 era, about 35% of the commercials are for an Alex Jones product. There is videos, his gold and silver sales, things like that. The rest of it was water filters that filters out the fluoride and all the toxins. Colloidal silver was a big one.
Colloidal silver. That strikes me as one of the really big.
Well, again,
snake oil things.
Well, technically, silver is an antibiotic when you use topically, like a catheter. They'll be coated with silver. Silver nitrate. When a baby's born, they'll put silver nitrate in the eyes. Supposedly, it's supposed to kill any type of STD that the mother may have had at the time.
Yes, I do remember. I remember an antibiotic we put in my kids' eyes, but I don't think it was silver nitrate.
Yeah.
They've moved on from that.
Yeah. My day, I guess when I was a kid, that was the thing from the 60s, 70s. So I think nowadays they probably got better stuff. But anyhow, but topically, silver is a really good antibiotic. So someone got the bright idea to blend it into water, kind of like there's a lot more in it than a homeopathic remedy. There's actual suspended silver in it, and you drink it. And it's supposed to kill the bacteria. And people have been doing it, and they keep doing it. And when you overdose or you take too much of this, you turn blue. Your skin actually turns blue, like literally Smurf blue, not just blood vein blue.
Right.
That's the silver collecting in under the skin.
It's I used to many years ago. It's been quite a long time. I used to listen to a podcast that was on Alex Jones Network. It wasn't Alex Jones, but it was on his network, and I remember all that stuff. I got really sick of that and stopped listening to that podcast. But if anybody wants to know what that podcast was, just drop me a line. I'll let you know. But anyway, I think we're have to wrap up now, Mike.
Okay.
Thanks for dropping by. It looks like Nick's not going to return. And unfortunately, James couldn't make it. James Garrison couldn't make it. I hope we'll have him and you and everybody else at our sort of like our series finale in a couple weeks. We're going to do actually two of them. We're going to do one here for North American people, another one which may also include some people in Asia, in the Far East, or in Australia. And then we're going to do another one a few days later at a time that will be friendly to the Near East and Europe. And we will put that out, and that will be the last of the Unseen podcast. We will be done with that. Now, a lot of the people and ideas and approaches of the Unseen Podcast will not go away. They will be absorbed into something that we have the working title of as Wow Signal Live, spun back into the Wow Signal. I already have a lot of information about that out on the RSS feed and on the blog at unseenpodcast.com. So if you have a chance to review that, please do. And we will be back then, and that will be it for the Unseen Podcast. If you've been listening all along, thank you very much. And don't give up on us. Just go to wowsignalpodcast.com, and soon we will have more information about follow-ups to this show. We're not so much getting rid of the show as we are absorbing into its parent podcast, the Wow Signal. So, and this is not the last you heard Mike Bowler, because Mike is on the Skeptic's Guide to Conspiracy just about every week and updating you on the tiny little minds of people like Alex Jones, which I think you, as you've mentioned, Alex is circling the drain, so you may have to find somebody else to kick around. But
yeah,
I don't think you're going to run out anytime soon.
No.
Especially not in the era of Donald Trump, where, you know, we didn't even talk about this week's bombings. I'm sure you'll get into that on your own show.
I'll be talking about that.
Yeah.
That's
the conspiracy theories were thick and fast on that.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So I'll save that for your show.
All right.
Skeptic's Guide to Conspiracy with Mike Bowler. I think it's MikeBowler.com. Is that where they go to find out more? Okay. And this podcast is unseenpodcast.com. And as I mentioned, wowsignalpodcast.com will be the future, starting in December-ish timeframe. So I'm going to around Thanksgiving. I have my 18th wedding anniversary. I'll have a niece who's getting married. And of course, we have Thanksgiving. I'll come back from that refreshed and overweight, and we will get started on the new thing. And I assure you, it's going to be not only as good as the Unseen Podcast, will be better, maybe even a lot better. So please stay with us. I will be closing the Patreon page for Unseen Podcast. Thank you if you've been promoting, if you've been supporting the Unseen Podcast through our Patreon page. Please go to the Wow Signal page and renew your support. So see you later. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Good night.
Good night.
And goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm closing this down.
Okay.
Nick
just joined.
Oh, there's Nick. Oh, we talk about the nick of time.
I think I just saw him pop in. Yeah.
Well,